Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we are taking a look at another game between Torch and Leela Zero in the CCCC 21 Blitz Challenger match played at chess.com. I'll just whiz through the opening. It's quite an interesting one and it sort of sets the scene nicely for the middle game that ensues. That's kind of the most interesting part about the game. So Torch is white, Leela is black. Obviously the opening specified by the chess.com opening book. So it's going to be slightly better for white at the very least. And these are quite interesting lines where the bishop comes out to c5, retreats back to a7. You chase the knight away from the central d4 square, so it's a little bit less attacking position. On the other hand, the kingside dark squares are weakened, so g7 in particular. And white sort of highlights that with queen g4. Now after knight f6, queen takes g7, rook g8 is not very clever for white. For example, there's even ideas like bishop takes f2 because of king f2, knight g4 check. So that's not what white's aiming for, but playing queen g3, you sort of keep pressure on the g7 square and also eye the d6 square, for example, which is also kind of weakened by the bishop being over on a7. So after castles, knight c3, knight c6, bishop g5. Again, slightly irritating move for black here. The knight is on a dark square and the bishop, which would normally be here, stopping any pin, is over on a7. So knight h5, queen h4, f6, bishop d2, g6 and castles. White's got actually quite a nice position here really. The black king side has been weakened here, so the kingside dark square is a little bit sensitive because black's played g6. The g6 square has been weakened by playing f6. The knight's on h5. If it gets hit, it'll come back to g7. That's not going to be a great square for the knight. Probably one of the worst squares on the board normally. I suppose the one thing that black's got is this sort of hedgehog kind of structure, where it's not easy for the white pieces to actually get at the black position so far. If white gets things going, maybe an h-pawn running or something like that, things could get quite nasty for black quite quickly. So, Leela played b5, very natural. Let's just try and play b4, disrupt the white position. I think in those types of situations, very important to disrupt white and just see where he goes. And then on the basis of where white goes, you can look at subsequent action. So bishop e2 played, hitting the knight on h5 there. Knight comes back to g7, pretty poor square. And now queen g3. So the queen re-establishing some contact with the rest of the white position, was a little bit offside on h4, freeing the h-pawn to advance and also attacking the d6 square and also stopping the black queen from coming to c7, which is quite a logical little square there. And here very interesting what Leela did. Leela really went for all out for counterplay, and like all the engines, never afraid of giving up a pawn in order to do that. And the key thing is, Leela wants to activate this knight. Basically, that's the piece that Leela thinks could actually cause some disruption into white's position. And also at the same time get this bishop active. This bishop, it feels like it's got potential, it feels like it's cutting across the white position, but for the moment it's not combining with anything else basically. So it's just a little bit irritating, but it's not doing anything else. So what Leela did was play the move f5 here. So we're trying to break up the white center and also free f5 for the knight. So e5 was played by Torch, pretty obvious. Put the pawn on e5 here. It's really clamping down on the d6 pawn, also giving an outpost on f6, and of course this pawn on f5 is stopping the black knight from getting there. So Leela played b4. Pretty much an automatic move in the Sicilian, really. I learned this as a child, actually, that I think it was Robert Fisher who said that you should always play b4 whenever you've got the chance, because disrupting the white position, disrupting a knight on c3 is always worth it. And that's kind of a rule that I've followed for the rest of my life. In this case, we chase the knight away from a4. Now, of course, you're also weakening some squares, right? This pawn could be attacked, and you're also giving white some possibility to attack some squares. But in general, on balance, it's always better for black to disrupt the white position, disrupt the white knight on c3, than to let it be stable there. And now, well, something very interesting. I mean, if you just give Torch one more move, Torch would play f4 here, just consolidating that pawn on e5, and really making this whole central structure solid. So Leela played this very interesting move, f4. I have to say that this reminds me very much of one of the most stunning novelties that Alpha Zero played against Stockfish. It was in the f3 Grunfeld, and it's in the Game Changer, and it was an f5 f4 move again in the f3 Grunfeld, just to activate a light squared bishop here. And basically that was all that it was. It was just giving away a pawn just for a square for the piece. And I remember a very, very strong player telling me that Alpha Zero played my novelty. So really quite interesting there. And this one's quite similar. Again, it's just giving up a pawn just for a square, but to get this knight active on f5, and disrupting the white position, and white has to decide where to put the queen. So Torch played the move queen to d3. And you'll notice actually that it weakens, it unprotects the f2 square. So you could say that the black could do this, but actually the funny thing is that this is nowhere Leela's intention to take the f2 pawn, because taking the f2 pawn is just met by rook f1, and if you go bishop a7, then the engines point out bishop f3, threatening bishop takes c6, queen c7, and g4, and you know what? The knight is back in the trap, back on g7, and after bishop g3, white's in complete control. Bishop attacking this rook, so you can't take on e5. The pawn's solidified. This knight's passive again on g7, and we've even got the f-file now for white to invade. Actually, all that you've done with bishop f2 is just give white a channel for invasion. So actually, what Leela wants to do, and this is the really deep part of the concept, really. Leela just wants to get its pieces active, and always have this threat in reserve of bishop f2. Sort of like saying, I can always take that pawn if I need to, but waiting until the absolute best moment and using the other activity that that black has got with this pawn sacrifice to cause white some problems. And queen c7 is quite a nice idea here. Just threatening knight takes c5 actually in some positions. So this white queen had to move from g3 over to d3, and that means that the e5 pawn is less protected. So rook e1 played by Torch. My engines were also looking at king b1. There actually knight d4 was what the engines wanted, and then this was a line that they played out to some great depth here. Takes, and then bishop f2, and after rook d3, just got to stop a piece coming into e3. Black plays h5, stopping g2 to g4. And white's better here. That's absolutely no doubt about that. I mean, this bishop is rather tied to the defense of the b7 pawn. Not easy for black to coordinate the pieces. But black's no longer a pawn down. This pawn is defended, and we'll try and get the rook like this active, and it won't be easy for white to break through. Quite a few draws being played there. Torch played something more active. Rook e1. Protecting this pawn, and also just tempting black to take this pawn on f2. Go ahead, take it, open the file for me. And now Leela played a move that only it really played. Played the move a5 here. Quite interesting. I think looking for ideas like bishop a6 just to activate the the bishop in some way. Also just solidifying that queenside pawn structure and sort of saying to white, well, not 100% clear to me what you're actually going to do. Dragon tended to like the move knight h4, bishop g3, and then knight back to f5, and yeah, just playing around, trying to hit that that bishop, get that one, and then afterwards get the pawn on f2. Dragon like Stockfish rather like the move rook b8, just getting out of any possible pins like that, and yeah, just intending to play something like knight takes c5, for example, king b1, knight e5, queen e4, d6, rook takes d6, takes, and then rook f4, queen f4 was one engine game between Dragon and Stockfish, and again, white's just a little bit better there. Lots of weak pawns for black, and well, if the queens get exchanged, then this knight gets into c5, but tenable for black. But yeah, Leela played the move a5, and Torch played the move queen e4, and well, I mean, Leela's got to do something reasonably quickly now, because yeah, you are going to start getting control eventually. The queen on e4 defending the bishop on f4. We're going to start looking for moves like g4. Maybe the bishop's going to come to c4, and we'll get in knight c5. These will be under pressure. There's stuff basically that's coming in. So Leela now took on f2, rook f1, and now queen a7, and yeah, this is quite important. You're sort of fighting around this e3 square that for the moment moves like g4 are just met by moving something to e3, so you're not actually able to fight for that. But Torch played rook d2, which is quite a cunning little move there, just eyeing the bishop on f2, not giving this as a check. And well, moves like g4 are definitely going to become possible now. So knight cd4 from Leela. This is really complicated stuff, but the point is that obviously if you go rook f2, then I've got knight takes b3 check, and then queen f2 will follow. And well, of course, I've also got a move like bishop b7 coming in. So the the white queen's in danger. This is super sharp, really super sharp here. Now Torch played a very interesting idea here, bishop c4. We're opening up the line of the rook on there, and we're also giving some pressure on e6. So if later this d7 pawn goes, the bishop will be ready to attack. But yeah, bishop b7, queen d3, still very, very thrilling. But well, the key point is that now that if you go knight b3, I go a b3, and then d7 is hanging, and e6 is hanging as well. And at the same time, I've got the idea of rook takes f2. So it really looks like black's in a lot of trouble. I mean, you can't play the bishop away because the knight on d4 will be hanging there. But we've got bishop e3 in this position, bishop e3, knight b3 check, the discovered attack, and a b3. And now knight takes e3 from black. I was kind of thinking, wouldn't I like to go queen e3, but it's not hard to see that rook takes f5 is rather annoying. And if queen d3, we've got rook takes f8 check intermezzo, which just wins a piece. So we've got to go knight e3. Takes, and now queen takes d7. And, well, this is looking quite appalling for black, really. I mean, black's position has been breached, and we've got stuff like queen e6, and well, rook's coming in basically, haven't we? But Leela has calculated this quite beautifully. Knight takes c4, queen e6, and king g7. Now the key point is that white's got to keep on going, because if queen c4, we go queen e3 here. Just pinning the rook to the king really paralyzes white somewhat here, and after something like queen e2, yeah, this is a very difficult resource to spot. We go rook f1, king d2, and then this very important move bishop a6. You're 2 pawns down, it's true, but after rook e1, rook f2, king d1, well, obviously g2 is hanging, and actually the engines want to go bishop b7 here, get this bishop active onto the long diagonal, and after e6, king f8, you're just sort of dealing with all the threats there. Yeah, this was what the engines were looking at. c4 takes, king e8, just blocking everything. Rook e5, bishop g2, h4, king e7, rook a5, bishop f3, king c1, king e6. And you're going to see plenty of these endings. The engines tended to feel that these sort of endings where it's rook and bishop, a possibility of creating a passed pawn because you've got 2 against 1, and just these 2 connected pawns, they're not important really. The rook and bishop manage to hold the stuff together, and you manage to create counterplay on the king side. Not sure I would intuitively know that, to be honest. I would assume that the position, I think, was very difficult for black, but the engines are really giving equality very, very quickly. However, Torch went full out for the attack with rook d7 check, and here black's got a rather difficult decision. Now Leela played the correct king h6, but I was sort of wondering, well, why wouldn't you go king h8? Because you've got all these checks coming in against the the white king if white tries an attack with something like queen e7. But white's got a superb move in this position. He's got the move king b1, so you're just going to avoid any checks with king a2, and then you're ready to play queen e7. The king's completely caught in a cage there. So black plays king h6 here, and what's the idea? Well, if you go king b1, you can go queen f2 in this position. Well, we're threatening stuff like bishop e4, for example. We're covering the rook on f8, and well, if ever the king is going to get attacked with something like queen e7, well, we play bishop e4. This is Stockfish's line, and king a2. We're just going to escape here. King g4, and well, there's counterplay brewing against the white king here, and this king is not so unsafe. I wouldn't say that it's safe, but it's not completely unsafe. So yeah, that was Stockfish's line. Yeah, Leela's line very similar actually. Bishop c8, check king g5, queen h5, and then queen g1. Yeah, just this crazy stuff basically. Queen d7, king f4, queen c4, queen h2, and Leela was saying that white had a slight advantage, but nothing more. Crazy positions here. But it looks basically like going forwards. That's absolutely necessary for black. It's easier for black to cover the king with its pieces when the king is moving forwards than when it's heading back into the corner, into its own little cage. But Torch kept on attacking. Queen h3, queen g3. And now, well, the black king has to keep on moving into the firing line, because king h6, queen h4 is mate, and king h5, rook takes h7 is checkmate. So king f5, and I mean, intuitively, if I had to calculate this from a distance, I'd assume that this was just curtains for black, because you're moving the king across the f file, so you have to, you can't. This can't be okay for black, because all of your counterplay from the rook is being blocked. But after b takes c4, there's queen g1, and the key point is that if you go rook d1, I've got queen takes g2. And this is actually covering everything. So, you're covering the rook check on f1, and you're also threatening the exchange of queens. And stuff like queen e3, I've got, stuff like bishop e4 simply. And you're just not going to be able to avoid the exchange of queens or a perpetual. That's the amazing thing about this. But I mean, that's absolutely crucial, right? I mean, if you don't have this, then nothing works. So king d2 was played by Torch, and then Leela playing hyper accurate. I mean, queen g2 is the obvious move, and this was what Stockfish wanted to play all the time. And yeah, this was you're attacking this pawn on e5. You've got these pawns running. The engine sort of thought that this was going to be sort of decent for black. The problem is that you go something like rook e7. I can go something like g5, b3, rook check, king e3, bishop e4, knight c5, bishop c2, e6, rook e6, sorry, king f6, rook f7, king e5. It's sort of your king is sort of close enough. You've got a bishop to cover the 8 square. Your king can interfere. You're just about close enough to stop that e pawn from queening. And yeah, but again, very, very difficult endings to assess. I'd be assuming that white was clear advantage to winning here, but Leela feels not. I mean, Leela played the move bishop c6, actually forking rook and knight there. But after rook d6, Leela didn't dare take that that knight. Not surprised, you'd have a queen f3 check, and just took off the queens there. But what you've done, you've sort of chased the rook away from attacking the h7 square. On the other hand, you've given white the possibility to play the move e6. So what do you do here? Well, if I was expecting something like knight c5, but then you just go rook c8, chase the knight away, and after knight b3 you go king e7, and c5 you go a4, for example, which is working out quite well. You know, white just isn't really able to hold everything. If you go knight b6, then you just go king e7, and after c5 you can even go rook, just simply rook d8. And again, you're going to swap off the rooks, and then you're going to come back with your king and win this pawn. And well, you've always got the possibility of creating a pass pawn on the king side as well. So white doesn't quite have enough really to get some sort of winning endgame here. So Torch played the move b3, rook c8, just stopping this knight from coming into c5, rook b6, rook c6, and now e7. And rook takes h7. So actually I thought that this should be quite a difficult ending for black, because I thought that white had played this very cleverly by trading that e pawn for the h pawn. I mean, you're still leaving the a pawn as a potential target, but now black can't just automatically create a pass pawn on the king side. But what Leela sort of spots is that, white's going to have to move the rook away to go after the a pawn, and that's going to give black the opportunity to go after the h pawn. So bishop f3, knight c3, and rook h2. And the big surprise to me really was that the engines thought that these two passed pawns, because you're going to capture this pawn on c2, were nothing compared to the g pawn. But maybe it shouldn't be just so surprised. I mean, you know that the bishops are excellent for both supporting the advance of your own pawns and for covering the advance of other pawns. A couple of connected passed pawns feels like a lot, but actually it doesn't seem to be that much at all. So rook c2, rook e8, rook d2. The engine's not really bothering about absolute precision here, because they just know that it's a draw. Rook d4, king b5, and then here Leela forced to draw, just chasing the rook away. Obviously you don't want to move the rook away because g3 would happen. So just rook g5 played by Torch, and the game was agreed a draw. Hope you enjoyed that one. I like this one very much, actually. I mean, I thought the opening was very interesting, and I loved Leela's way of giving counterplay. Just these pawn sacrifices, just for some disruption, some squares, and the chance for activity. And especially, stuff like you don't really notice at first that the fact that the queen has been moved away from g3 weakens the e5 square, but that is part of the compensation. The possibility, the ability to keep on harrying white in small ways. I thought that was really, really nice. And I mean, I was just very impressed with the whole defense, really. I mean, this was on a total knife edge, but this idea of first of all, the idea of king h8, king b1 I thought was really nice, but the idea that you can keep your king safer by moving it forwards, because all of black's pieces are moving forwards. There's no point, you can't defend the king half as well if it's back in this cage, far away from the counter-attacking black pieces with queen f2. I thought that was a nice general point to remember in your own games when you're trying to make a decision like that. I mean, I'm quite shocked, of course, that that black can get away with this. But yeah, I thought this was very, very nice. And well, I mean, those endings, they're quite surprising in a way that these endings are all turning out as draws somehow. But I think a very good demonstration of the principle that bishop superiority against knight, it can help support the advance of your own pawns and stop the advance of the opponents. And well, this seems to apply whether it's a pure knight versus bishop ending, or even when rooks are on. So very interesting game here. Another draw, but yeah, I mentioned in a comment to an earlier video that I think the draws often don't get looked at that much. I mean, this applies the same to human games, but I think certainly in engine games, the most spectacular games and the most fraught and tight ones, the most amazing ones for defense as well, those are the draws. And yeah, I really find that those are often the ones the most worth analysing and playing through. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that. If you liked the video, give a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends. Take a look at my new books, available on Forward Chess at a heavy discount, since I'm the Forward Chess author of the month for August. So do take a look at that. I mean, Forward Chess is a really beautiful way of playing through my books, I find. Because what I tend to do is I tend to have a lot of explanation, but then also some engine games as well, which are more complicated but are very evocative and really show the full potential of the position. And sometimes you want to go through those complicated games, and sometimes you just want to enjoy the comments and just play through the flow of the game. And Forward Chess, really gives you the ability to do that. I think it's just a really lovely way of playing through books. So do take a look at that. And otherwise, thanks very much for watching this video, for comments you leave and all that, and stay tuned as we've got some more games of Torch against Leela. Thanks for watching.